Okay.
I am happy to be here on your very first episode. It's very exciting.
Yes, it is very exciting.
So, what do we have in store for me today, Emma?
Yes.
You're going to ask me some questions about my life, my origin story.
Yes, about your origin. I don't even know that much about your origin story, so I'm very curious about this.
Should I start? It all started on the day I was born.
Yes. Oh, but first let's just I'm sure our viewers don't know you as much as I know you, so why don't we just give them a rundown of who you are?
Sure. My name's Oren. I am an artist, a lover of many things, a student. Now I took a hiatus from school after my sophomore year of college, and that was like the first time that I really strayed from the traditional path of schooling. And yeah, I would describe myself as, I would definitely identify as an artist. I would identify as a lover of learning in general. And I think that it's kind of hard to describe myself beyond those two identifiers. Those are like really what's important to my soul right there. I'm also transgender, which is an important facet of me, but it's not, I wouldn't say it's where I mainly identify myself as, like in my kind of grand scheme of life. What's important to me definitely is what I do and not who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's really important to make that difference, or kind of define who you are and what you do. It's to keep from, how should I put it? To have a clear identity and know who you are. It's very important. So I'm happy you kind of clarified that. But yeah, I guess let's dive into your origin story.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up in rural Connecticut in the East Coast of the United States, and I was in some music programs and some other art programs, and I always had very good grades growing up in elementary school, and then middle school and high school. I held a pretty high GPA. But when I was a freshman in high school, I decided that I needed to pick something and I needed to stick with it, because that is what everybody tells you, that you need to have one thing and you need to be really, really good at that one thing. So I thought, hey, I love art. I can do art. So I'll be an artist, capital A. And I dedicated my high school career to meeting that, I guess, like putting myself in that box, being an artist. So I took all the high-level art classes. I did all this stuff that was kind of expected of me being an artist. And while I still loved the sciences and I loved being outside, and I loved learning and going to the aquarium and doing a lot of other things that are important to my shark love and love of other sea creatures and nature in general, I kind of decided that I wouldn't delve into any sciences in the terms of like a career. I would just be focused on doing art. And a lot of people told me, you can't do art as a career. And so that made me even more gung-ho to do art, because I'm like, I will prove them wrong. And I thought that was what I wanted for a very long period of time. So I go through high school. I'm enrolled in choir and other music programs. I'm enrolled in the National Arts Honor Society and all of the things they said you have to do if you want to be an artist. I graduate and I'm like, well, now I got to go to college. And at the time when I was a senior, I went through a period of very bad depression. And that was accompanied with me finding out about my LGBT origins. I was like, maybe I'm not, the same as everybody else. And that, sparked a big controversy in my heart.
I see.
Yeah. But during that period, I went through this period of depression, which I think is very, relatable to a lot of LGBT, youth and even LGBT adults that are growing up and kind of come to terms with their own coming out to themselves. And that period of time where I should have been, applying for college and there was a lot of pressure on me, I started to just see that as this whole stressor, and it just I sunk kind of deeper into the ocean of what was going on in my own brain. And I basically enrolled in the first college that I got into. I went to an interview up at Maine College of Art in Portland, Maine, and I brought my portfolio with me. They said, "This portfolio is great. We would accept you here right now if you just, submit an essay to us. You don't need to do the full application process. We've seen your portfolio." And I said, "All right, I'm in." And that's where I went. I didn't even think about it because I was so caught up in other things at the time that I just thought, whatever, it seems like the next natural step in my path. And it was also, I think, in large part due to the outside pressure that I was getting, in that people were telling me, right after high school, you need to go to college. You need to graduate high school. You need to go to college. You need to get a job immediately. There is no breathing time. You got to do it, especially if you're going into a field like art. And so I thought, they must know best. Adults know what they're talking about, right? Is what I thought. But let me tell you, no, adults don't know what they're talking about. Maybe some of them do, but for the most part, we are just as lost as any kid. And there are definitely important lessons to be learned from adults, but I think the most important lessons are those you learn on your own. But I went to college at Maine College of Art. All I knew was I wanted to do art. I didn't know what kind of art. And I kind of slipped into the first practical field or what I thought was a practical field that I discovered, which was game design and animation, because I figured it's a tech field, so there will be available work. And I started working at it. I loved the work that I did. What I didn't love was the community, and just the tech field in general, and like the kind of attitude that a lot of people in the tech field have towards the natural world and towards each other. It's also a field with a lot of sexism. It's a field with a lot of, transphobia for sure. And at that time it was the first year, my freshman year of college, that I was living out as a trans individual. And in the immediate community of my school, that was very accepted. They were very good about it. But, you start to kind of realize that that is not the entire world, that a college setting, one of academia, is typically a very kind of small, confined, sealed bubble of reality that exists in a space that is completely separate from what basically the real world is like. And I found that transition very jarring and very difficult to kind of conceptualize, that I would be, in danger potentially, or just not, received well. And there would be a lot of cultural ramifications for being out as a trans individual and as a gay individual. Or I guess on the, in the spectrum of gay. And that, it really hurt me at the time. Did you have something to say, Emma? You look like...
Oh, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was enrolled in school. I was in the game design program. And while I was doing game design, I thought, this is not everything there is that I want to learn. I was in a program that was very specific. It was very small, and it had a very select number of people who you talked to on a daily basis. And I found this extremely limiting, because I wanted to have so much more diverse of a perspective about the world and about how I was thinking about games and art and game design and life and people and the earth. And I thought, gee, I wish that this school had other things. Like, I wish I could learn, I don't know, I was even craving math at that point. I was like, I just want to do something that's not just fine arts all the time, because it's only satisfying one part of my brain, where there were a full spectrum of things I wanted to be learning, and I was not getting that full spectrum of knowledge from the school that I was in. And also just the city of Portland was kind of an oppressive environment as far as being able to go outside. It was in a city and was just very kind of restricted, and there was a lot of crime, and I just felt unsafe in like 10 or 15 different ways, just like different facets of myself. And so I was sitting somewhere and I had this idea, like, what if I just leave and just learn Japanese? Just like do it, because why not? Like, I can't do it here, obviously. And I also feel like this program that I'm in is not taking game design as seriously as I want to delve into it. It's like the people around me are just kind of skimming the surface, and to them that's okay. But for me, I really wanted to dive as deep in as I possibly could and get a full understanding, and like from several different perspectives, like from a psychological perspective and like things like that. I wanted to have a better understanding of what I was doing and what I was creating and how it could affect people. And so I thought, well, where can I go that has a world-renowned understanding of how to create compelling and beautiful animation and games? And that's Japan. And also, anime's pretty cool, and I like that. Japanese culture is pretty cool, and I like that. So on my own, I started learning a little Japanese, and then I was talking with a therapist, actually, and she said, well, if you want to go to Japan, just go to Japan. Like, why do you have to not?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought, wow. And that at the end of that semester, I took a hiatus from school after my sophomore year, and I flew back. Actually, I drove back across the country from Maine to Montana, where my parents were living. And I spent 6 months working at a coffee shop and figuring out where I was going to go next.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so that was how I met you in Kyoto at the Language Institute.
Wow, I never knew the events leading up to that. So it was
a lot.
It's so interesting to hear all of that. It sounds like that moment was so important to you. It sounds like a huge moment, like a crossroads almost. And
Absolutely.
I guess I would like to hear more about what you were thinking. During that time, there must have been something that I'm just wondering, was it like a click, like one moment where you were just like, Japan, or was there something that led up to it? Like, I don't know.
I would say it was like stepping into a dark room and closing the door. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I was leaving where I came from. It was kind of like, I didn't feel like there was a click, that everything was suddenly like working out for me. It was more like, I know something needs to change, and I know that I need to experience more than what I've previously experienced, because I need to have that perspective in order to educate my next step. And I said, well, if I love game design, and if I am true to that path, I will come back to it. So I figured, if I can take some time to gain a little more perspective about what I'm doing, then that would be perfect. And I honestly thought in my heart, like, I'll come back to it. Like, I will come back to game design. It's definitely what I want to do. And so I went to the Language Institute with the intention of spending 2 years becoming semi-fluent in Japanese and then enrolling in a Japanese university.
Oh.
And it took me about 3 months to figure out that that's not what I wanted to do.
That's fast.
Yeah, it was very fast. I remember it was in the summer. We were in my apartment, you and I, talking, like sitting on the floor, and it was really hot. It was like 100 degrees. Yeah. And there is a Japanese soap that was playing in the corner on the TV, and we were both like, this is so cheesy and horrible, but we were both still watching it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and then we talked about kind of like you know, plans not going the way that you want them to, or like not that the way you expected them to, and like how can we learn from those things and treat them in a positive light. I think we talked about this specifically. It's kind of a little bit hard to remember considering that was like a year and a half ago now.
It was a while
but,
ago.
Yeah. But I remember because you had some concerns as well. I don't remember exactly what they were.
Yeah, it was about school. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Just, you know, what we were thinking moving forward after this program.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and I think that was another like crossroads moment for me. Because it actually, I feel like up until that sophomore year of college, I was just kind of doing what I was told. And then as soon as I left for Japan, that was like, actually, as soon as I left college and was driving across the country back to Montana with my friend, that was the first time that I was like, this is me. This is like who I am, and this is what I want to do. And it was like a really defining moment for, I think, my character and what would become of me of my own volition instead of just what, you know, people actually told me to do. Because I even feel like my decision to go into art as a career field during high school was kind of like almost like it wasn't my decision at all. Almost like, you know, when you give someone an option between two things and they choose one of those things and then they feel like they chose it. It's like, it's a tactic that's done in video game design a lot, where you think you have a lot of say in what's happening, but it's really just very clever design, where you think you have an influence on what's going on, but in reality, it's really just a choice between two or three options. And I felt like that was kind of my path up until that point. And then, you know, I experienced this crossroads and I made a decision, and I closed that door into the dark room and I thought, okay. And I put on my phone flashlight, you know, and I started looking around this room, if you'll excuse the metaphor. And I thought, okay, this is scary, but it's exciting. And slowly, as I was in Japan, I began to kind of get the full picture of what was around the room. And I tripped over some like stuff that was on the floor, and okay, the metaphor is kind of getting away from me, but you see what I mean? Like I started to discover that although it was exciting and scary, there were parts of it that I began to become familiar with. And then I was able to make decisions based on those things that became familiar to me. So for example, like living in the city. Originally, I thought that would be an okay fit for me and that I would adapt to it. And then when I started to familiarize myself with the actual act of living in that city, I realized that it was something I never wanted to do again. It was, I am not compatible living in cities, and that's something I now understand about myself. And it's something that I never could have understood about myself if I never left a rural area. If I had been just in a rural area for most of my life, I don't think I ever would have figured it out. Even Portland, Maine is just, you know, it's not a huge city, and I was kind of confined to where the college was, and I didn't really stray very far. It wasn't like Kyoto, which is, you know, a big city for me.
For you,
yes. I am a country bumpkin, and for me, it was a very big city. And then I think what was really the most valuable thing for me in Japan was discovering what I didn't like, and it wasn't what I liked. I mean, I'll talk about something else that I found was really important about that experience, but the first was that living in a city taught me all of the things that were more important to me than city. Like, so when I was in the city, I couldn't see the stars. That was something that was really, like, very emotionally jarring to me. Even though it's just something that's kind of simple and it's a luxury, but it was something that was so, you know, emotionally deeply disturbing to me that I kind of spurred me to start rethinking what I was doing. And just walking around the city, I found myself cutting through green spaces wherever I could, just to cut through them and just like see the colored green and feel something. And you know, that spoke volumes to me. It was like, this is something that's really important to me, and it felt more important than my art and more important than the people around me. it was this connection to what we're doing to our world. Because I started to see, the worst parts of humanity as well, where, people would just throw trash out and not think about like single-use plastic and all that. It was just like there were so many other things happening in their minds that they didn't want to consider, even, just like being more conscious of what you're buying that is covered in plastic, or, that kind of thing. And in Japan, there's a lot that's covered in plastic. And luckily, they do have a pretty good recycling program, but I mean, you can attest to that.
Yeah. Japan's recycling is great, but their use of plastic is just horrific.
Yeah,
everything's wrapped
scary.
3 times. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they ask you if you want a plastic. They don't even ask you if you want a plastic bag.
They just stuff it in there.
That was one of the first phrases in Japanese that I learned was ofukuro. No, fukuro kekko desu.
Yeah.
Just like, no, I don't need a bag. Thank you, but I don't want to. But
yeah.
But the positive thing that I learned in Japan for sure was I started teaching private English lessons.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh. You're frozen on my screen. Uh-oh. Let's see. Okay.
Sure.
Oh yeah, you were talking about teaching English. But
yes.
so before you go into that, I wanted to say, like, it sounds like what Japan did for you was it almost taught you what you were missing from your life. Oh, we're back.
Oh, no. We're back.
We both disconnected a second. Okay.
It almost it taught me what I was missing.
Does it sound accurate?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. It definitely taught me what I missed from living here, and like what I was taking for granted while I was living in the States, and things that I thought I kind of was like, I don't want to live in Montana because there's nothing here, and like all of living in Japan taught me I want to go back to where there's nothing there. That's like where I thrive, and I just didn't understand that that's what was happening.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Yeah, and honestly, living here now, I am living my best life. It's especially after self-quarantining too. I'm very, very introverted, and so this has been like the most successful and refreshing period of time for me, is just to kind of be in my own space and figure out what is going on in my life, and be in a space that's just, there's nothing, there's no distraction, there's no kind of constructed importance that people are putting on themselves. It's all just, here's the earth and here's what we're doing to it, and it's all become very clear to me what is important to me, I think. But going back to teaching English in Japan, the most valuable part of that experience for me, I think, was just understanding the joy that can come from developing communication with other people. Because before, I didn't see a lot of importance in being very communicative, because like I said, I'm very introverted. And so doing that work, doing private English lessons with people was just so refreshing for my brain and my consciousness and just everything, like to make that kind of a difference, and to help people to communicate in a way that was exciting to them, because these were people who all sought me out on their own. They weren't like someone who had to take an English lesson because they had to, because it's school. It was people who, were from all different walks of life. I had students ranging in age from 25 to 60. And I think I had about 8 students after I was done. And they were just, they came to me for English help for so many different reasons. They're like some of them were for work. Some of them were for travel. Some of them were just to like understand literature, English literature, because they love to read. Um, and it was so amazing to meet those people and to understand where they're coming from and why they want to learn. And it made me think like I would be tickled if I could wake up every day and help people who want to learn. It just made my heart so full and happy and like satisfied. And I was walking home from doing a lesson in the evening one night, and it just struck me like I could do this forever. I feel like I could do this. Um, and of course, I wasn't pleased about living in the city, but I thought, you know, if I can make this connection and make a difference in someone's life like that, that's something that's really important to me. But what's also important to me is the planet. And so if there's some way that I can do those two things together, I thought that would be amazing. But you know, but I'm doing art, and then art became something that was less exciting to me because I didn't feel like it was a good portal for communication, even though it can be in so many ways. Um, at the time, I thought, I don't know, man. And then I got very sad, and I
Oh.
ended up after six. Yeah,
Oh.
it's okay. After 1 year, I ended up going back to Montana, and I started taking some music lessons at the community college just because I thought, I don't know, like, why not? I can. And it was cheap. So I took some music lessons and I was enamored. I was like, this is amazing. I was taking music theory and music composition. Uh, and I've always been musical, but I've never been theoretically musical. And for me, it was just kind of like connecting those bits of my brain that needed stimulus. It's like, yes, this is great. It's like kind of mathematical.
Mhm.
And my instructor for music theory was this woman who she used to be a high school teacher, and then she now works for the community college as a professor. And her experience, I just ended up talking to her after class one day about teaching and like education and music, and she's just one of the most fascinating people I think I've ever met. And she said, you know, Oren, there's this music educators conference in Billings, which is 8 hours away from where I live in Montana. And she said, we're going to have like a little thing where we take a couple of people down there in a van, a college van for 8 hours. You want to come? And I said, yes. And I went down to this music conference in Billings after an 8 hour drive, which was ridiculous, but you know, I do it for love. And it was it was like Disney World for music teachers. It was one of the most amazing magical experiences I've ever had. I was like, this is great. And there were workshops on how to teach people like violin vibrato and like what to do if your elementary school orchestra is like just if you have classroom management issues with them, and like how to teach special education in the form of
Mhm.
dance, and like just all sorts of workshops that were so different than I in education than I had ever experienced before. I was like, this is like the full rainbow of how education can work properly. And we're in Montana. And I was like, I don't know how that happens.
Mhm.
I thought Montana was kind of backwards.
Wow.
But
What was this
yeah.
place? What was this called? What was the conference
It's
called?
it it was called the National Music Educators National and it had an acronym that's very very difficult to remember, but it was in essence a national board of music educators specifically, and they had just a big old conference. It was like Comic-Con for music teachers.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
they
So,
had a bunch of presenters.
it sounds like this was also education based. So it was like
Mhm.
combining this new interest of yours, or like not necessarily new, but
But
revived.
revived.
Yeah,
Yeah,
revived interest of yours with teaching. So it
mhm.
sounds like it was perfect.
It was great. And then I was like, I could teach music. And then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, no, no, I can't teach music, but I could teach. And so I started to think maybe I should go into education. And I
Mm.
enrolled in the education program at the college for a little while. And it didn't spark as much joy as I was hoping it would.
Oh.
But what I always came back to was just like taking an earth science class because I thought it would be kind of fun. And I ended up with way more than I thought I would originally take. And I did a lot of research, and I kind of went back and forth, like, I should finish my art degree. I don't want to finish my art degree. I don't want to do any more college art. But I really want to go back to school. And so I'm thinking, I want to go back to a university somewhere, but what am I going to study? Or like, I want to teach, but what? Which is, kind of the opposite problem that a lot of teachers, or the opposite, I should say, like solution that a lot of teachers have for wanting to teach, is that usually they have something that they're passionate about, and then they're like, I'll teach it. For me, it's more like, I want to teach something that people want to learn, but I have so many different interests. I just have like across the board a lot. So it was difficult for me to kind of find a niche. But I did a lot of research into interdisciplinary learning, because that was something that was never presented to me as a possible option.
Yeah.
And, it just like in school, they're like, you do one thing, you do it real good, you're done. But for me, I was like, but I want to do a million things kind of subpar/okay. And to me, I thought interdisciplinary learning would suit me really well. And I found a program at the University of Montana that allows for double majoring, and it's a Bachelor of Arts, but it's in natural sciences. And I thought, that's completely perfect for me. And maybe it won't be, and maybe I'll change it in the future, but it's something that like gives my heart a lot of happiness and makes me excited to learn. So that is the current trajectory that I'm on. But I also understand now in my life that it's probably subject to change. And like, I think the thing that nobody ever tells you about education is that it's not just a like straight pathway. It goes like all over the place, for a lot of different people, not just for me.
Yeah. I agree with all you said there. So that's where you're at now.
That's where I'm at now.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm gonna plug my computer in because
all right.
It's dying.
That's not what we want our computers to do.
Okay. Boop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds like at one point, I guess what I want to ask you about is, it sounds like before your mindset was really just like, you need to focus on art. Can't stray away you're gonna prove everyone wrong.
Yeah.
I'm gonna prove them wrong. I'm gonna show them I can do art, be this awesome artist.
Yes.
But it sounds like after you made that decision to just pack up your stuff, go home, and then go to Japan, it sounds like you started pursuing what you just found fun or found a little interesting. That mindset shift is, I think, like, it's a pretty big deal. I mean, it seems like such a small mindset shift, but it's a pretty big deal from going from just feeling like you have to stick with this one thing when you have so many interests, to just following what's fun for you. Because it seems like by doing that, things have gone clearer to you. So
much, I would say so.
Like, what has helped you, I guess, make that shift in your mindset and just relieve some of that pressure on yourself?
To be honest, I think being away from my parents has been helpful. Because when I, throughout high school, I was living with my parents. And when I went away to college, I began to kind of have that transformation of self. And it did take a while, especially, I was like, I don't know, 19, which I think is, a good time to have like an existential crisis for breakfast every morning. But I think to allow that transition to happen, um, and allow yourself to start realizing that your opinions for yourself are more important than your parents' opinions. Um, that realization has been really helpful for me. Um, to understand that, well, so I have parents who like me to feel guilty when I don't do what they want me to do. So they'll say, like, you're disrespecting us or something like that. And to understand to yourself that no, I am doing what I know is best for me because they don't know everything that's the best for me. Even if, you grow up thinking that they do, that kind of divergent from what you know as being the kind of immeasurable authority that your parents usually hold. Once it's broken, you can kind of step back from that and have some perspective and see that no, actually, I am an individual with a brain and I can make my own decisions. And I think that was very helpful for me to just kind of decide that no, I think I know what's best for me, or at least I know what I want to try, and to kind of strive to pursue what you want to try instead of just relying on your parents knowing what's best for you, I think was very helpful for me.
Hmm.
And then also, I guess, being willing to accept that doing something else than what you know is going to be difficult. I think as humans, we don't like to be beginners at anything. It's just it's a bad feeling to feel like you don't know what you're doing. Um, but I think if to have some willingness to be a beginner again is one of the most magical things you can do for yourself, because it opens so many, just throws open windows, and you can experience so many new experiences through doing that, that you forget that you feel bad because you don't know how to do something, and before you know it, you know how to do that thing. So I started learning the viola recently, which, if you don't know, string instruments are notoriously difficult to learn as a beginner, and notoriously bad sounding when you are a beginner. And my viola sounds like a screaming cat almost every time I play it, and I've been playing for 7 months. But then I go and play for someone who knows what they're talking about, and they say, "You sound amazing for someone who's been playing for 7 months." To understand that yes, it's going to be difficult at first, and you may not like how it sounds, especially or how it sounds or how it looks, or how it presents. Especially in the case of an adult person with a brain who knows what it should sound like or look like or experience like. Um, to accept that while you are learning, it's not going to be perfect, and you have to look at that as not only something you accept, but also something that's beautiful, and that you will only get to experience for a short amount of time before you're actually good enough that you don't make those mistakes anymore. I think was also very important to me. And like, Emma, are you familiar with wabi sabi ceramics?
Hmm. Yeah, wabi sabi.
So for those who are not, it's, I mean, maybe you can explain this better than I can, but it's like, it's, at least in ceramics, it's the beauty in the imperfect, and how there are certain matcha bowls that will look like they're like tilting like this, or they have like chunks taken out of them, or they're like really kind of curvy and gross and muddy. But there is a beauty in those beginner stages of throwing. So if you had just learned how to throw a bowl on the wheel out of clay, you would produce something that looked kind of, excuse my language, but bad.
Shitty.
Yes, in this bowl. And to have a master ceramicist go back to your roots and kind of imagine, what is the spark of beginner joy that makes this object look like it has spirit to it? You go back to what you previously recalled as a beginner. And that is so extremely difficult as someone who is a master of an art form, that to understand that when you are a beginner, there's like a really beautiful, kind of juicy, good spark of spirit in what you're making, and there's so much passion, because you haven't been like disillusioned by the earth, by the whole world yet. Like seeing those horrible notes you screech on viola as something beautiful has also been helpful for me.
Yeah, that's really well said.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think, yeah, one of the things school unfortunately teaches us, I mean, with our current school, is it like instills this fear of making mistakes, and like it teaches us that being a beginner isn't a great thing to be, when seeing it as something beautiful is it it just helps you appreciate what you're doing in that moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So like what, like it's such a big, I feel like you've definitely gained a lot of wisdom, I would say. You gained so much wisdom from
Thank you.
living in Japan, and then even since I feel like we last really talked to each other. Yeah, I'm just wondering, like, did you just like figure all this out on your own? Like, was it all your experience, life experience, or teachers?
I would say that it's a combination for sure. Some of it has definitely been on my own, but I think that facets of what I have said are things that I picked up inadvertently from teachers. So, like, somebody said something, um, like some kind of general statement, like, uh, I don't know, I can't think of one, like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And then I kind of thought about it and then just extrapolated. And then a different teacher would say something else like, well, if your spark of joy is the same when you're a beginner as it is when you're a master, like, are you truly a master, or are you just a different kind of beginner? And then I'd be like, what? And then I'd have to think about that for a while. And it's just like, having a lot of different sources, I think, is wonderful. And like I said, to experience a lot of different perspectives. Like, I've talked to people from music fields, I've talked to people from art fields. I did some observation at some high schools last semester that were very interesting, because talking to high schoolers is like, it's like they speak this weird alternate language that's like only accessible to people before the age of 17, and then suddenly you lose it. Is what the kind of impression that I got.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's like some spark of madness that kids have, I think.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know. They would just say things that I would just never have thought of, and I would just start extrapolating from there. But I think definitely teachers have been a really good resource for me to bounce ideas off of. And I think also, as someone who not only wants to go into education, but has always been this way for some weird reason, I tend to form bonds with teachers more readily than bonds with peers. So I have found that in a lot of cases, I just talk to my teachers, and then boom, I have like a million ideas, because they're ideas that those teachers have gleaned from other students. And there's just so much back and forth contact between students and teachers and learning. And I think that it's such a precious resource for learning about your life. Like, teachers are not only a good resource for a subject, but also just for, like I said, just your life. Yeah, I don't know. That's definitely part of the wisdom is from teachers. I don't know if I would call it wisdom, but definitely I've thought about a lot of stuff.
I see. Yeah.
I'm also an avid podcast listener, which does give you a lot more perspectives. I would just say my advice would be get as many perspectives as you possibly can, so you can weed through the bad ones and find the good ones. And when we are kids, I feel like a lot of our resources are just our parents and our peers. And like, peers are valuable and parents are valuable, but I think there's just not sheerly enough influence for us as children that we need to kind of branch out and actively seek other perspectives. I think has been the most lucrative for me, is just to go in there and be like, I'm going to talk to some people today and it's going to be great. And then I just end up talking to my instructors, because that's how I am. But,
Mm-hmm.
Teachers are great people. Even it doesn't matter what they're teaching, and it doesn't matter in what setting. I think even people who teach public education, you don't have to be a fan of public education to find really meaningful conversation with teachers who teach public education, I think. Because it's, it's the mindset. Like, a lot of public education is just about like test scores and standardizing education and like national standards, but teachers never do it for the money because there's really not a lot of money in teaching. Um, Teachers are there because they care about teaching and they care about learning. In most cases, I think. Probably like 90% of the cases that I've ever come across is just people who really, really genuinely are passionate about teaching and learning. Usually learning first, teaching second.
Oh,
We're all a little selfish.
Yeah, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, that's definitely my experience. Yeah.
Learning first. Usually.
Usually.
Yeah. I've noticed that you're really good at talking to teachers and just building relationships with, I mean, just from what I saw in Japan, right? I don't know other than that, but like what kind of advice do you have for maybe somebody who's looking to kind of, I guess, build a relationship where they feel comfortable talking to a professor or a teacher in their life?
Yeah.
And maybe they're having some trouble with that.
Gotcha. I would say that number one is just to talk to them like they're people. Just like go right up there and be like, hey, do you have a minute after class or whatever? You don't even have to be, you don't have to be that formal about it. Usually I would say like, perhaps in a university setting, I would be like, do you have a moment after class? And if they're like, no, I really gotta go somewhere, just come in during office hours. Usually, university instructors and professors will always have office hours somewhere in the building where you can just go in or just call them, send an email, just reach out in some kind of capacity, even if you don't have something specific to talk about. Just, reach out and be like, hey, I just wanted to talk to you and about your experiences and about, like your class and usually they're very receptive to that, I would say. Like, I think in Japan, I just did a lot of like just hanging back after class and just like talking to my teachers about whatever. They usually started the conversation too.
Oh.
And I was scared. I was like, I didn't speak Japanese when I got in there. I was like, I don't know what to say, but I'm just gonna be like, say what I know how to say and like have them reflect onto me what they want to talk about and just like little snippets of conversation. And that over time that relationship will form. Because teachers are passionate about students who want to learn for the most part because of their desire to learn and to teach. Yeah, I would say like if you're in high school, I think a lot of my relationships that I had with teachers in high school was through clubs and activities.
Mm.
And then through that I was able to meet other friends who were like-minded and also had teachers that they had good relationships with. So I was able to, have a better relationship with a teacher through a friend who also had that relationship with a teacher. But, like 9 times out of 10, I would say, I don't have this perfect statistic because I'm not really sure, but if you approach a teacher and you say, can I talk to you? I just want to chat. They're like, heck yeah, let's chat. Let's talk about it. Let's, and if you have an academic question, even better. If you have a life question, most of the time teachers are, willing to accept that. I would say, it gets to a point where your teacher is not a therapist. However, if it's like a small problem and you're having it and it relates to school, I would definitely approach your teacher because at least they'll know who to direct you to as well. Like, teachers are really great resources for everything, I think, because they're just really people who are good at communicating. It's like the mark of a good teacher. Because how else can you teach without being able to communicate to your students? I think. Does that kind of answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. So just like, sounds like just, don't take it too seriously. Just try to strike up a conversation. and can be
Right.
about anything, really.
That's what I think, yeah. I think that's how I've usually gone about it. Or I'll like ask about something first. Be like, I mean, because I'm someone who has a lot of questions usually too, just in general. And I'm not afraid to ask them. I'm like, I don't understand this. Please explain. And usually I say it in class because I want other students to get the benefit of the knowledge. And if you're ever, excuse me, afraid of feeling like you're that guy who always has your hand raised, it's like that's part of the classroom experience. Like you are that guy. And you know what? That's great. It's great to be that guy. It doesn't matter if you're annoying to the other students or if you think you're annoying to the other students. In all likelihood, you're not being annoying. Nobody cares. They're just all like picking their noses and wanting to leave class to like go somewhere else. So just be that guy. Get all that you can out of a class, especially if you are in a university setting with like a class of 20 people, because that is one of the most valuable spaces that you can be in. Is just, like having those brains in there, just like 20 brains who are ready to go and who are ready to learn and ready to get into some content. Like you can get into the most interesting conversations by just starting something. Or like 18 of those people don't want to be there, and then you get like one other person and you get a really cool conversation with them and the teacher, and that's cool too. Yeah, never be afraid to ask questions and to start conversations, I think.
Yeah.
This tea is good.
Oh, I
Got some
forgot
really
about
good
my
jasmine
tea.
Oh no.
Oh, it's jasmine.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your experiences with teachers have been pretty positive overall, would you say?
Overall, yes.
Overall.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say I have had negative responses to teachers before, and I would say if I had to generalize, I would say that every teacher that I've had a negative response to was due to lack of communication.
Oh, okay.
It was never because of anything that I did or the teacher did. It was just that we didn't communicate well or often. So for example, actually, I'm taking an online psychology course right now. And I would say it was probably the worst class I've ever taken. And the reasoning for that is that the teacher does not communicate well. And because of that, there are a lot of frustrating consequences that come from me, trying to approach the content and not being able to understand what she's trying to say. But I would say that I don't have a lot of advice for bad teachers because I tend to, I don't know, I don't think I've ever had a really bad teacher experience where I felt like I couldn't handle it through talking to the teacher. Because I think, well, in most cases for me, you just, you approach the teacher, you say, these are my concerns. This is what I'm having trouble with. Will you help me? And they're like, yeah, I'll help you. I'm sorry that you're not, getting it. I'm sorry that I am, incompetent. No one would say that, but you know what I mean? Like usually the teacher will blame themselves for being a bad teacher, which, I mean, it's usually people who just, teaching is a skill. And for a lot of people, the actual act of teaching is more difficult than they thought it would originally be, is what I've learned through talking with people. I don't know how true that is with everybody, but at least a lot of people that I've talked to have said that it's definitely a skill, and you're not going to be good at it right off the bat, just like any skill that you've started. So if you're having problems with teachers and it's a lack of understanding, I would say approach the teacher. If it's a lack of respect from the teacher, so if the teacher is, for instance, I had one teacher who didn't respect my pronouns in college, and I approached him about it, and I was like, this isn't cool. And he was like, okay. And then he like complained to some other faculty about it, and then he still didn't respect me after that. And I ended up just dropping the class, because sometimes that's the best response to a situation like that, where if it's a lack of respect, um, or it's a lack of, or if there's like a teacher who's really racist or like really just says a lot of things that are very inappropriate or sexist, or just is like generally not very cool about issues that you find really important, I would say just get out of that situation if you can. And if you can't, talk to someone else about it who could help you with that situation, like someone in the administration. Um, because a lot of times they can help you, like they can transfer you to a different class, or they can, talk to that teacher and really figure out what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as problem teachers, my experiences have been pretty mild.
Pretty mild.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
So.
it's communication.
Communication is everything.
Are you up to talking for longer? Almost time.
Sure.
An hour?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
just wanted to check in, make sure. I'm really interested in diving in more into you said during your your gaming, the middle of the gaming studies or degree or whatever it was, program, I don't know, but in the middle of your studies it sounded like from what I heard, it sounded like you were kind of isolated, because you were you were talking about how your goals with gaming, with learning, I guess, how to make games, game design.
Yeah.
And what you felt your peers were learning game design, like the reasons were mismatched. So I guess it sounded like to me you felt pretty isolated in that situation. So I'm just interested in hearing more about that. I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling.
Yeah, that's really apt. I definitely felt very isolated when I was in that program, and I think it felt like I had a lack of peers, almost. Like there were people in the program. It just didn't feel like there were very few people who I could have critique with, who would give me actual constructive critique instead of just saying, it's good or I don't like it. And there were very few people who were like, this is what you could improve on and this is why. And that information I felt like was extremely valuable to me, and I was barely receiving any of it. And I think when I felt isolated like that, my frustration was it was less about the school than it was about the people around me. And I started to feel resentful toward them, which was something that I hated about myself. I was like, I don't want to feel resentful to other people in my class. I'm like being, I don't know, just kind of, I'm like on a high horse, and I don't want to be on a high horse. Like, that's not my job. My job is to just do my work and not care about what anyone else is doing. But to me, it felt kind of like I was digging a hole, and I was like 6 feet down in the ground. I was digging a hole, and then I looked up, and there was like a dude standing at the top looking into the hole, like sipping on a juice box. And it made me angry. Yeah, that's what it felt like to me. I'm like, what are you doing? You should be down here digging this hole with me. And it's like, I felt less like I didn't feel like I'm better than everyone else because I'm digging the hole. I felt like, why isn't anyone else digging holes? I'm angry because no one else wants to be here, and I want them to be passionate about it, because selfishly, I want that environment where you can bounce ideas off of people, and you can find other passionate people, and you can share your passion, and ultimately by sharing passions create this larger, amazing, Frankenstein's monster of art knowledge. And that's what I really wanted, but I think that's just not realistic in a lot of cases. And I think we have this very romanticized view of college that we're given in media, and probably our parents and people who've romanticized their time at college. It's like, oh, it's this amazing time when you're full of, the room is full of other intellectuals. And it's like, in reality, it's full of a bunch of dudes who are doing the same dude stuff as you, just at varying degrees of dudity. And it just, to understand that I was going to find a few people that were close to me, and that was going to be it, was a step for me. I was like, okay, I just have to find a few people who want to do critiques, and we're just going to critique all of our own work. And I think that's been the experience of people for like thousands of years. You don't find everyone, you just find a few people, and you connect with them, and you reflect ideas off of each other. And I think that community can be found in so many different ways. It doesn't need to be just a physical community, especially not right now because of, coronavirus. So we're all just, in a moment of how can we find community? How can we meet new people? How can we not feel alone? And I think the internet is an awesome resource for that, like to find, forums or even like Tumblr if that's what you're into. And, they're just places where you can go and find like-minded people and talk to them and just, bounce ideas off of each other. And it doesn't need to be, you don't need to like all hang out in a dorm room somewhere with the like pennant on the walls like in the movies. It's just, there's tons of ways to meet people. So my advice for that would be, it's okay to only have a few people to talk to. I think it's natural. And if you don't have people to talk to, like, just reach out to people, like on the internet. And I mean, obviously, have your internet safety and be careful, and don't like meet anyone in person, especially not right now because you don't want to do that. But like using the internet as a resource to meet people, I think is a very good idea, because you are more likely to find like-minded people in places that you post ideas and like share ideas. So like, I don't know, a lot of different kinds of forums, or like I was looking recently at a violin luthier forum, which is so niche and ridiculous, but it's all just people who make violins. Which, how are you ever going to find another human who makes a violin if you make a violin somewhere? Like, there are very few people who still do that. So using the internet as a resource to connect those people who are on opposite sides of the whole world, has enabled luthiers to meet other luthiers. And it's the same, I was listening to a podcast about taxidermy, and it's the same kind of thing. You find people through, portals of combined interest. And not everybody's going to have the same interest when you're in a small space, even in a college setting, even in a college class, even in the same major. It's hard to find people who all have the same interests. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a similar experience studying animation in Japan. It's like pretty much exactly what you described. Where, you start feeling resentful, and then you start judging yourself for feeling resentful.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But I think there's something, like for me, I overestimated. I was like, because I'm going to school, I'm going to be surrounded with all these passionate people. It's going to be so great. But just accepting that there's, if you're lucky, a couple people you're going to connect with, and being thankful for those people, or being okay with yourself, learning how to be okay with yourself if there aren't those people. And also, like podcasts are so amazing. Podcasts, that's, if someone likes the same podcast you like, immediately you have this shared experience or connection with that person.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's why people bond so readily about shows. Like, Steven Universe fans are all really cool with each other because they all like Steven Universe and stuff like that. It's like, if you have a show that really emotionally, or like some piece of media that really like emotionally connects you, you do have this shared experience with other fans that I think is just so valuable and really cool. I'm going to turn my light on, so excuse me.
Notice it's been getting darker.
All right, here we are.
Alrighty.
Yeah, the sun is just barely setting here in Montana at 9 p.m.
9 p.m. It's already pitch black. It's been pitch black for a while here.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be pitch black until like 10:30 here, probably. That's just Montana in the summer.
Montana in the summer.
Montana in the summer. It's a good place to be.
Yeah. It's one of the things I want to do with this podcast sort of thing too. It's sort of connect people through these experiences. And
yeah.
I really want this to be like a platform or vessel for connecting people with each other, because each of us we hold so much information. We're just like these walking information encyclopedias. And if we would just share with each other what we know, I think it would just be very helpful to a lot of people.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. Yeah. I mean, it's a great resource, I think, for just people to kind of start to understand each other. And, to relate someone's interest or someone's experience with a new voice and a new perspective is, I think, how we learn, just in general. And it's at least how I learn. It's very valuable.
Mm-hmm. Was there ever a time when you felt, I guess, felt like you were the only person who felt a certain way? You're the only person, in the world who felt a certain way.
Absolutely, yeah. I know how silly that sounds, right? Because obviously there's going to be another person that feels the way you are, but I feel like we all have those thoughts. Like, there's got to be no one else, because I've never seen anyone else who feels this way. And that, like, it dovetails pretty easily into my experience with being trans, because I'm not like a very binary trans person. I'm not like, man. I'm like, man. But also, I don't know. Like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to think about it. And I thought, I'm such like an in my own head kind of person. I thought there's no way anyone could ever be feeling the way that I feel, and I should just feel a different way because it would be easier and better, and then I would have fewer problems. But first of all, you can't change the way you feel, But yeah, I mean, and for me, it's still been difficult to come to terms with like my amount of transness, I guess would be a good way to put it. Because all of the media that I've ever seen about being trans or being non-binary has been nothing like what I experience. And I know that there are people out there who are feeling the same thing as me. I just have never found one yet, and there's a very deep and immense loneliness in that. And I've definitely come to terms with it, but also, to find that person, I feel like would be just a like mind-blowing inspiration. Yeah, it's like, when you're reading a book and you suddenly tear up and you don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because you've like really just like at a base level truly identified with something that someone has said, and there's that like magical spark of joy kind of moment where you're like, oh my god, thank goodness I'm not in the world alone. There's like somebody else who feels this way. That's happened so many smaller times in my life that I feel like it's gonna happen for everything that I'm feeling, because there's so many people, and we keep making more of them. And so, like, somebody's gotta. There's only like so many, ways your brain chemistry can deviate before it's all kind of the same. Or maybe there was someone in history, or there will be someone in the future. But I mean, and I may never find them, but I 100% think that there is no statistical way that I could be the only person feeling the way I feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're talking about like looking for a doppelganger, but
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
definitely
it's
not.
different.
There is a doppelganger who lives in my town who apparently my friend saw walking into the Target on a mission the other day. So there
Oh,
is
okay.
there is another Oren walking around in Kalispell on a mission
So we've
going to
got that
Target.
taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. I already
I,
have a doppelganger. I don't need that.
yeah, you know, that's not what you need. I'm
Yeah.
wondering though, is it like I guess when hmm, like when you're looking for that um person, right? Or like character or something who you can relate to in a way that helps you feel less alone. Like when you feel that emptiness, is it are you like looking for someone? What are you looking for specifically? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
guess so. I guess it's hard to say. I'm like specifically, I would say I'm looking for someone who has an experience that describes what I'm feeling. So I would say usually, like, if we're talking like literally, what am I looking for? I'm looking for words or like either a text or somebody's voice describing this thing that I can't put into words. And in that way, like that communication would allow me to be like, okay, I'm not the only person. Um, for me, visually, it wouldn't, make a lot of sense. But like to have somebody explain the experience that I can't explain, I think is what I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's hard to say though, specifically. Or just someone who, when I explain how I feel, they're like, that is me. That is me. You just explained it perfectly. It could go either way, I think.
Oh, yeah.
Um, yeah, and so far I just haven't found anybody like that, where I have explained something and they're like, me. I explained something and they're like, huh, okay.
Yeah, that's
And I'm
usually
like,
the case.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Right. And I think, yeah, it's just like people aren't necessarily similar in all the ways that we want to be, and that's okay.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's, what's in my life has been so valuable to me was having those other perspectives. But at the same time, I would like to have someone who shares my perspective as well, just to feel that feeling of camaraderie. And
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I think
Is
it's
it
easy to feel lonely.
uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask about. Like,
Mm.
I guess yeah, because like not having that, I'm wondering, does it? I guess in a I'm curious about in a school environment too. You know,
Hmm.
did does it ever make? Do you ever have like what do you feel about yourself? You know, is it like you feel like you're too different from other people, or you feel like you're not allowed to share the space with other people who you can't relate
Mm.
to? I'm just curious, like what about finding that is so important?
I suppose in a school setting, it's more the important part is the sense of camaraderie, I think, because it's I don't experience feeling like I don't get to share the space. What I do experience is frustration that there are so many. So, I mean, I guess, let me rephrase that. The only way I can think of it is I was in a Shakespeare class and we were talking about gender representation in Shakespeare. And I come from a trans perspective, which no one else I almost said in the audience, in the class did. Um, and it was just hard to listen to other people try and talk about gender from a perspective that kind of almost invalidated my existence. There were just a lot of people who were, using terminology that they just assumed was, how you talk about gender, and like you don't need to be careful of hurting the feelings of people who don't conform to the gender norm, because yeah, it's not even on your radar, like you don't even think about that. And so in a sense it's almost like I felt like I needed someone to be with me on the other side of this fence where like people were essentially accidentally throwing tomatoes at me. um I guess like partners in crime kind of thing, but
Mm.
it's more of, I don't know, it's a little bit hard to explain. Um, but I felt very alone and very almost victimized. But in a way that like nobody could have known, because I don't really like walk around with a giant trans flag on my shirt.
I
That's
see.
like, hey everybody, like I don't conform to the gender binary and let's talk about it. I just kind of am, just I'll just go to school, I'll just do my work. I don't want to talk about it because it's a stressful conversation to have every single day to like every single person, especially from people who have never met a trans person before and just don't know how to act around you. And like um so I guess like most significantly in school, my transness is what inspires me to find someone else who thinks like me and acts like me, because it feels very alone and it's very stressful. And I've learned that from being outside of school and being in my own space at home, I feel like a whole different, refreshed, amazing person just because of the stress of dealing with that every single day, or
Oh,
hoping the teacher doesn't misgender me, or just hoping that gender doesn't come up in conversation has just been completely alleviated because I don't have to see anyone. Um, I'm just here by myself and I know who I am. And it's been great. I'm just like, okay. But, I feel like if I had another person in that classroom situation with me who was also trans, or also was like some sort of non binary, or had like, you know, that kind of perspective, and we were able to, be there together, I would feel less like it was all directed at me, even though it wasn't. Do you know what I mean?
yeah. It sounds like you just like want an ally almost. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
like someone.
But also, like, an ally that truly understands what
Mhm.
I'm going
Mhm.
through. Um, yeah. I mean, ally is kind of a funny word in the LGBT sense.
Yeah, that's right.
Because there are a lot of like allies, and it's just different. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Cuz there can be someone who like stands up for you or tries to understand, but it's different from someone who's been through it the same way you have.
absolutely,
I
I
see.
think so.
Yeah.
And also, people who stand up for you, you feel kind of like a guilt for that in a lot of
Oh,
cases.
yeah.
At least I do. If someone stands up for me, I'm like, I hate that I have to be this way so that they have to do that,
I see. Yeah.
Or like even my friends, actually the friends who are the most adamant and aggressive about correcting people when they misgender me are the people who stress me out the most.
No way.
Because yeah, it's really weird how that works out. It's like I appreciate it on a very deep level and I love them. I love them and I want them to know that I appreciate it. However, I hate that that has to happen, and it makes me feel like I'm such a burden on them. Even though,
Mm.
that's kind of some backwards thinking, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's definitely a different situation when you have a true ally who is like experiencing the same thing that you are. Um, or just someone to like side eye at during class,
Mhm.
just to
Mhm.
to be able to be like, yeah, okay, yeah, we both heard that. Even if it is kind of like, I don't know, it's kind of silly and kind of immature, but it's a feeling of comfort, um, to have someone who understands you. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you have like more of that now, or going back to school soon? Do you feel more confident about that, being able to find someone to just be like,
No, I don't, but I do feel more confident that I have a frame of reference to think about it with. So I can kind of, instead of being like, oh, why was today so long? Why do I feel like I just ran a marathon even though I just came back from school? I can be like, oh, it was because, I had to run across campus to use the gender neutral bathroom, and then like 6 different people misgendered me, and like I just felt like garbage, and then I dropped my lunch. Like there's, you can have some perspective on as to why you are feeling this way, and I think in that way you can kind of combat how you're feeling a little more, and you can go and be like, okay, so I understand that is a stressor for me, and so I can avoid situations in which that would have to happen, or I can understand that that's stressful and think about it and just move on and hope that
Mm-hmm.
with time, as I am acclimatized to it, that stress reduces. It's not. I mean, it's not ideal, but it's what we got. And I think to a degree, in order to come to I guess in order to reach a more important learning experience, you have to go through the stress and what you don't like about it. So, for instance, if I wanted to learn about, I don't know, like the works of William Shakespeare, and I recognize that Shakespeare class is stressful for me because we have to talk about gender, I could overcome that stressor and end up with the end result of now I can recite Shakespeare with a little bit more knowledge about how it was written and why, and I can enjoy it a little more. And to get to that end goal, though, you have to kind of overcome that process, which
Oh,
can be very difficult and
wow.
very stressful.
Yeah, it's like
But
you have to face this everywhere,
yeah.
basically. Like
Mhm.
with everything.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and for me, it's like I can't just hide in my house for the rest of my life. I have to, go out there and do the things I love. And in order to get there, there is going to be some stress, and that's okay. I gotta do the things I love, and it's okay. It's like how you have to pay money to go to Disney World. Disney World's the fun part, but you still gotta pay the money. Maybe that's not a great metaphor, but I mean, hey, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's like mm, I guess like what goes through your mind when you're processing this, like there's maybe something happens at college or school or something, and then you recognize this,
Mhm.
and like what goes through your mind so that you can just focus on the learning and just enjoy that instead of
Yeah. So, I mean, there is a degree of pushing what you're feeling aside, which is not. I don't think it's the best path, but it's what's worked for me. Is you just kind of go, okay, I'm feeling that. That's fine. We're gonna focus on what we're doing right now. Um, and it's okay that we felt that, but we're just going to continue on and we're going to keep doing what we're doing. And for me, because for me, it's actually more stressful to actually confront that um, head on. Like, so for example, my music instructor would misgender me, and I instead of directly engaging her right there and correcting her, I'd just be like, all right, I'm just going to continue learning music because it's not worth it to me to do that right now, because I would have to take myself out of the zone to correct that, and then I'd be stressed about that, and then it would be harder for me to get back into the learning zone to where I could continue to do what I was doing before. um, so sometimes to just ignore what's going on briefly and then think about it after has been more successful for me, but I don't know if that's good advice, to be honest, but that's where I've been at.
I see. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely different than repression because I will think about it after class. It's not like, oh,
Mm.
just conceal, don't feel. Don't they never have to know. Like, no, you go, you stop it for now, and you're like, okay, that was a thought. We're gonna pick that back up later. We're gonna finish this, and after we're done with that, we're gonna think about that thought. And um, I mean, usually that's me. Like, that's been working for me. Is I'll go and confront somebody later about it.
Mm.
Like I'll go in office hours and be like, hi, just wanted to kind of come in to say that I'm a little uncomfortable because of this thing that you did, and usually people are like, "Oh, I'm sorry," and then they fix the behavior. But it does take a very high degree of confidence to do that. But I think it takes an even higher degree to do it in the middle of class in front of a whole bunch of other students,
Oh yeah.
and I don't think that's always the best option. Um, yeah, actually, I had one instructor correct another student about my pronouns very kind of like firmly, and I felt bad. I was like,
Mm.
"Oh, I'm sorry that like you must feel really awkward about that now." And like he's the teacher, so there's kind of like this like it was just a weird situation for me. So I think, and I'm sorry this has kind of devolved about talking about gender specifically, but it's just kind of a good topic to do this with, I think,
Yeah,
to understand,
I
like,
think it's
yeah,
good to talk about it. It's something that's obviously really important to you, right?
yeah. I mean,
I
it's
think
important in the way that it's my reality.
yeah, it's your reality, but like you said at the start, it's not everything about
Right.
you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say so.
It's it's one of those things that's unspoken
Mhm.
about, and kind of when somebody starts talking about it, a lot of times people are like, like,
Big
so
gasp,
I think
yeah.
it's good to talk about it, and it's really, um, yeah, to hear like about how you feel bad when people go
Yeah.
out of their way. It sounds like you see it as they're going out of their way to correct other people for you. How that makes you feel
Yeah.
bad. I never really thought about that before.
Yeah, I appreciate it, but there is a high level of guilt that I associate with it. Um, because, if I weren't trans, then they wouldn't have to do it, and so it's my fault, which is clearly kind of twisted thinking.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Um, and I can think about that and be like, that's twisted thinking. But also, it's just what happens in my brain when that, happens.
Yeah.
So, mm.
Where do you think you got that thinking from? Where it's,
Oh, probably my parents.
oh
I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know, probably.
Somewhere.
Just because, I mean, they made me feel guilty for like most things that I did in my life if they weren't what they wanted. And I think, intrinsically, there's some kind of guilt factor that goes along with me doing anything that's not the accepted norm. I'm just like, oh no, I've done it now. I've
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
really screwed up now. Um, and they're also just basically just now freshly and slightly coming to terms with the fact that I'm trans. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm 23, and I've been trans. I mean, I've been out as trans since I was like maybe 18 or 19. It's taken them a while. It takes some people longer than others. Um, and I mean, I would say that this is not even a long time for like some stories that I've heard about other people's parents. So, they're just starting to get the hold of it, but definitely, it's that thing I was talking about earlier about kind of distancing yourself from what your parents like and what you like, or what you know is best and your parents know is best. Um, but there's a lot that goes into conditioning and how you're raised and your experiences leading up to your adulthood that can influence the way your thinking manifests. And I think that a lot of my immediate responses to things are based on how I was raised to kind of like feel guilt for doing things that are not correct, like as a punishment
Mm.
response. Um, and yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are other people who feel like that. I don't think that all trans people feel like garbage when you correct somebody else like misgendering them, because that's obviously a wonderful thing to do as an ally, or just like anyone really. And it's very validating and very cool. But I mean, there are probably some other people like me who are just like, oh, I wish they didn't have to do that
Mm-hmm.
for me. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, the only way I can relate to it on a slightly milder level is when people just assume I'm Chinese or
Mm,
um or maybe Korean or something.
mm,
And then sometimes someone else might be like, no, actually she's, American.
yeah.
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 And I'm just kind
Yeah.
of I wouldn't say guilt, but I feel awkward about it.
Yes.
I'm
Yeah,
like,
for
did you
sure.
have to say that? Like, it wasn't necessary? I feel that. But I think
Yeah.
it's not the same as your experience, obviously. But
No, but
it's like
definitely like, yeah.
that similar
Yeah.
space, I would say. Similar
For
space.
sure.
Hmm.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, it's definitely interesting to hear about, people's experiences with allies, just like people who are trying to help. And this is allies in the LGBT sense, like people who are not having the same experience that you are, but are trying to be helpful and to be like someone who's with you and someone who stands by you. Because I think in a lot of cases, people are really incredible, and just really just just good, when it comes to standing up for other people and being allies, and like standing up for people in a way not something that original person could do themselves, you know um, in other words, being able to have a position of like being able to do something that, I guess, I don't want to say the victim, but the whoever is being acted towards would not be able to stand up for themselves for. Wow, that sentence was a doozy, but
Yeah,
do you know
I
what I mean?
I think I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah,
Um,
it's like yeah, or I mean in the more extreme example, if you're being attacked,
mhm.
for just being who you are, and then sometimes in those moments people just, freeze. They don't know what to do. Or it's just very stressful. And having someone there, you can correct me if this isn't what you're talking about, but like having someone there who just comes in and um helps you out or defends you can be a good thing to have.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
But at the same time, it makes you feel bad when, at certain times, right? Makes you
Right,
feel
for sure.
guilty. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is something that people can do you think, that would be really helpful for you? Or I guess maybe something you wished someone did back, like back in the day when you weren't so clear about who you are? What's something you really wished like someone could do to help you?
You know, that's a really good question. I really can't think of anything. I think, maybe to share resources with me. I am very fortunate. I have a lot of really good ally friends who are, willing to, like, I had a friend who just sent me like a brand of clothing that is like designed for trans people and like that kind of thing. Just like things that they see that they're like, oh, this would be, a good resource for Oren to have, and then would send them to me. that's a wonderful thing that you can do as an ally that would be really supportive. Um, yeah, just also if you see, like there are a lot of personalities in Instagram that are, you know, I mean, I'm just using, LGBT because it's close to me, but I think this goes for like for race, for like career field. I mean, it can apply to a lot of different things, but if you see a personality that you think your friend could identify with or like could be helpful for them to just see that somebody made it that looks like them, it's I think it's a good thing to also send those resources to your friend, and that's a great way to be an ally. I think actually like correcting someone if they misgender your trans friend is a great way to help. It's just I feel weird about it because I have weird brain stuff. But I think for the most part, like people really appreciate that, and I appreciate it too. It just does make me feel guilty.
Yeah, I don't think it's
but I
weird
think that's fine.
that you feel that way. It makes sense to me. Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Just like be a friend. Just be a friend.
Yeah.
And do what you think a friend would do, and don't be weird about it. Like a lot of people like overcompensate. They're like, I know a trans person, and then they like have to do a really big thing and like do almost overcompensate enough to like impress you with all of their like knowledge of your minority.
Yeah. And what do you think is in people's minds when they do stuff like that? Like what do you think they're thinking?
I don't know. Maybe like maybe they're kind of like trying to convince themselves that they don't have prejudices, like they're like, oh, I because I've had a lot of people say like you're so brave, or like or like that's amazing, that's incredible, and I'm like, I mean, I don't really understand what's incredible about it, but okay. I think it's just that they're like, they've probably never met a trans person before, and they're just like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to react. I don't know what to do, but I'm just gonna make it clear that I'm not a bad person by trying really hard. And I think, it comes out of good intention, for sure. It just, it comes off as really weird. Just treat people like people. Like, you don't have to treat them like they're like a descended god that needs to be worshipped for their difference, just because you're not sure how to react. It's just a person. It's like just people. We're all people.
Yeah.
I don't know. That is my opinion, though.
Yeah, I think when people are confronted with something that's different than what they're used to, it just throws them off guard sometimes. I mean, I've definitely felt it before, because I'm from a pretty, like, I always say, like, the community I live in is pretty much a bubble, like a privileged bubble. There's a lot of really privileged people here, but yeah, I guess just being open to meeting people who are different than you is just, it's so important, because yeah, and just like finding a way to get through that initial discomfort and get to a point where you can really communicate with people at where they're at. Because like when I met you for the first time, I think like I met trans person maybe once or twice, and it was like briefly. So then when I was getting to know you, it was new for me. So like I wasn't sure how I'm supposed to act, or like what I'm allowed to say or ask you about, so of course there's that discomfort, but sure. I think it's so important to just get through that discomfort, so even if you can't see that person just as who they are at first, you can get to that point. Because I mean at the start when it's different, it can be difficult.
True.
to just...
Yeah, and I think for those of us trans people, we should all be conscious of that too, and try to kind of accommodate, like, understanding that people are uncomfortable and are, like, don't have a lot of knowledge, and, like, be a little bit open to educating people and, like, understanding them if you want to form a relationship with them. Just, like, be chill. Don't be really mad when people don't understand things. Just be chill and, like, try to very gently understand that people are coming from a place of they just don't know about it yet. So that's okay too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. It's good to talk about this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I hope I can reach some other people who are feeling like they can't find anyone who thinks the way that they can. And I hope that, like, I think similar to you, and you're like, oh my god, he's saying stuff that I think.
Yeah. Maybe you can be that person. You might be able to be that person for other people who you're also trying to find in a way.
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. So what are you thinking now moving forward? Like, I guess Go ahead.
I'm thinking I'm ready for the next step in my journey, whatever it may be. And I am enrolled in school in the spring, and I will just see how it goes. And I'm excited for it. And I'm actually not nervous at all, which is so surprising to me, because I've been just outright disgustingly nervous for every life event that has ever happened to me ever. And I feel fine. I feel great. I'm just excited for it to happen. It feels awesome. Yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm just like,
nice.
I'm ready to learn.
Wow. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, that you're not nervous for once.
Although I think being nervous is natural too. No, it feels good. And I'm kind of at peace with the idea that it may be hard. And I may not like all of it.
Yeah, that's great.
That's part of the beauty of life.
That's great.
It's the part of the beauty of wabi-sabi pottery.
Wabi-sabi.
Yeah, it's not all great, but it is all great because it's not great. I think I've been spending too much time with my viola teacher, who is basically like a glorified, I don't know, he just spouts a lot of stuff like that where it barely makes sense, and I'm like, what?
Oh.
I'm like, yeah, sure.
How did you make the decision to go back to school after taking some time off? I think you were questioning that for a little bit, right?
Yeah. I just wanted to learn. And I was, I kind of always wanted to go back to school in some way. I just didn't know where and what for and how. I know that I want to learn. And I think, so somebody asked me the other day, what would you buy if you won the lottery? And I said I would go to school for the rest of my life. And just learn all this stuff. And just get degrees in everything. And I'd be so overeducated, and it would be great. I just love school. I love it. I just love going in there. What I don't love is the gender stuff, but I love everything else pretty much. And also test taking. I pull my eyebrows out when I take tests.
Yeah.
Fun fact.
Oh, you like literally?
Yeah. I'll like pluck out eyebrow hairs when I'm taking a test out of nervousness. But anything other than that, I love being in the classroom setting. I love asking questions. I love listening to lectures. I just love it. So that was what made me decide to go back. It was not because I was like, oh, I need a degree and I'm never going to do anything. I was just like, I love to learn and I want to go back to school. because I love to learn. And that was, well, so for a while there was a kind of balance between, do I get an art degree? Do I go to school for science? And because the art, I had so many credits already. I'm like, I gotta finish my degree. But then I was like, no, but I love science and I want to learn about sharks and like fossils and bugs. And I was like, okay, but ¿por qué no los dos? Why not both? And I decided I would find a program that would suit both of those interests, both actually getting the degree because, I have committed a lot of time and money so far into it and would like to see it to completion, but also learning things that really make my heart happy. Like I learned that there is an ornithology course at which is the study of birds. And I am absolutely over the moon jazzed to take that course. I'm just ready to learn about birds. And I want to do some, botany study and just like really get in there and learn about stuff and, see what kind of pathways that opens for me. And just kind of the excitement of knowing that there are so many different pathways that it could open up to me, I think is what part of what spurred me to go back to school. I'm like, I'm going to meet so many people who are in so many different career fields and can give me new experiences. That's what really draws me to universities and university setting. Yeah, and I'm just excited. I'm just excited for it.
Cool.
I would say it's not for everyone, but if you're excited about it, you should think about it.
Yeah, that's really good. Good advice, I think. If it doesn't excite you,
Think about other options, I would say, if it doesn't excite you, because you're gonna have to put in a lot of time, and that's your life. Your life is time, and if you're committing part of your life to something that doesn't excite you and doesn't get your brain stimulated, I think that's not the best use of your time, in my opinion. But that also comes from an extremely privileged place, and I think that things would be different if I came from a different place. So I just, everyone is different and everyone has a different situation. But I think never feel bad if your situation is like, quote, atypical. It just doesn't make any sense to feel bad when you could be feeling good about wanting to learn or like wanting to study music or do something that's, not what you originally set out to do. Because there's so much joy and passion and all of the wonderful things about life, about pursuing something and learning about something that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
So do you have any other questions for me,
Emma? Do I?
Do you?
I think we covered a lot.
I think so too.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to say before we close?
Well, I'd like to say that if anyone would like to reach out to me, I have Discord and I have Instagram. And if I don't know, Emma, are you going to do show notes or something? You could.
Yeah, I'll do show notes.
Just in case people are curious and want to start up a conversation, because I'm always down to have a conversation.
Cool.
As a future teacher, I follow my own principles of thinking that it's important to communicate.
I'll figure out a way. I'll put those somewhere.
Okay, cool.
Discord and Instagram. Your Instagram, right? Okay. Yeah, I guess the final question would be, so what does walk your path mean to you?
Well, I think it's understanding that everybody's different, and that even though everybody's different, there are people who you can find kinship with that are going to be similar to you. And so walk your own path, yes, but also know that you're never truly alone, and that there will always be someone who is walking a similar path that you can talk to and you can, associate with and feel like you're not the only person on the earth that has ever walked this path. There are other people like you, but not everybody is like you. And that's okay. That's part of the beauty of life. And that's given me a lot of solace.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. You enjoyed it?
Absolutely. I did. This is a lot of fun.
Bye.
I took a break and I'm still tired. I went away, doesn't feel like it. Holding my breath while I kill time. Almost like questioning real life. Cause after you've done it and done it again, the results only showing the same side. You wonder what's happening, why is it working for others, but I'm